What does it mean to be one of America's leading energy investors? For BP, it means growing lower carbon solutions like bioenergy and EV charging. It means bringing major new oil and gas projects online. And it means adding more than $70 billion to the U.S. economy last year alone. See how else BP is investing in America at bp.com/investing in America. That's bp.com/investing in America.
Here's your grand weathercast. 60 degrees in the driver's seat. In the passenger seat, a high of 66. In the second and third rows, a balmy 70 degrees. Just the way Grandma likes it.
With 3-zone automatic climate control, life's grander in the first ever Grand Highlander. Toyota, let's go places.
Just want to remind folks that Rebecca and I will be at Obsessed Fest this year. It's October 20th to 22nd. It's in Dallas, Texas. And speaking of our friend Patrick Hines, he has a new book out.
Yes, and it's hilarious.
You have your copy. It's called Failure is Not an Option.
That's right.
So, we know Patrick's life is ridiculous. So he's put together 12 of his most embarrassing and outrageous stories in this book. They're all, true to life. I mean, I didn't go fact check them, but I'm just going to assume they're funny enough.
Go back in time.
Not going back in time. Did you know, Rebecca, I don't know if you got to this part in the book yet, that he and his husband, Steve, they spent 18 months transforming their apartment into
a daycare?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then they closed after 1 week.
Yes.
Because they realized they don't like other people's children. And Patrick was once very excited to spend the weekend with gay icon and Golden Girl living legend B. Arthur. I'd say he's always hinted at what a disaster this was. So now we get to hear the whole story. Also, Patrick spent his whole lifetime wondering if his lesbian mother hooked up with Glenn Close.
Yep.
Yeah, Fatal Attraction Glenn Close when they were in their 20s. And guess what? He actually got an answer from a slightly tipsy Glenn Close herself at a Christmas party.
Right.
So you got to read all about it. Failure is Not an Option is out now in hardcover and as an audiobook. You can get it wherever you get your books, and you should get it, but only if you like to laugh.
For exclusive podcasts and more, sign up at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media.
I'm Rebecca Lavoie, and this is Crime Writers On. Crime Writers On is the original true crime review podcast that digs into true crime, pop culture, other podcasts. And on this episode, when Mike Williams vanishes on a hunting trip, authorities suspect he was eaten by alligators. But the true predators may lurk much closer to home. We'll review the latest season of Over My Dead Body, Gone Hunting. Joining me to get that done and more is true crime author, TV journalist, and host of the These Are Their Stories podcast, my husband and love of my life, the plaid-wearing Kevin Flynn. Happy fall, Kevin.
Yeah, it's about that time. You know what? I'm not even a pumpkin spice fan.
Me neither.
But they had pumpkin spice Cheerios, and for some damn reason, I bought them.
Yeah, how are they?
I haven't even opened them. Like I said, I don't like Cheerios. And I don't even like pumpkin spice. I'm like, what's wrong? I don't even recognize myself.
It's okay. I bought a pair of old lady shoes today.
So, yeah, something is off.
I'm so excited. It's fall. It feels like back to school time. It feels all cozy.
You had to get new shoes.
You're literally wearing a plaid flannel shirt.
It's nice brushed
flannel. It's all
flannel.
crisp out today.
It is, yeah.
It's wonderful. Also with us is private investigator, certified pet detective, resident cat lady, and author of The Final Curtain, Laura Bricker. Hey, Laura.
Hey, I got no plaid and no new shoes, but I'm here.
Yes, you are. Welcome. Mm-hmm. It's nice to have you back. And finally, our captain of all things cynical, the author of the City Trilogy of novels, host of the Strange Arrivals podcast, and our Patreon Deep Dive Book Club podcast, Toby Ball. Hey, Toby.
Hey, Rebecca.
So, Kevin, what is coming up on Thursday's podcast? This is obviously Monday's show.
Yeah, on Thursday, we're going to be talking about the new documentary from Netflix. It's called Scout's Honor.
Okay. Is there something else you would like to talk about, though, Kevin, before we get started with the show?
Well, you're just like moving this right along. Hey, I just want...
Okay, sorry. Should I pause for a minute, let you ruminate on that some more?
There was actually like this long subtitle.
Okay, Scout's Honor.
Yeah, it's called Scouts Honor, and I got to look the whole title up now. Scouts Honor.
You had one job.
The Secret Files of the Boy Scouts of America.
Okay.
I do want to thank everybody so far who's donated to my Walk a Mile in Their Shoes. Again, this year, what this fundraiser is about, if you haven't heard it before, is I put on a pair of high heel shoes and then I walk a mile with a bunch of other people. Don't look at me like that. It's
like 2 blocks.
It's a symbolic mile. You think like my ankles could take a whole actual mile?
Yes.
One time, I think the first year, guys, when we did it, it was something like a mile. It was very long. And then the second year, they said, yes, and we're going to do it through this park. And the ground was soft. And everybody, especially me in the high heel shoes, were just sticking in the mud.
Boo.
And the shoes coming up. So now we're just going up and down the street.
Yeah.
But I digress. We're raising money for the Crisis Center of Central New Hampshire.
Yep.
This is an organization locally for us that provides emergency services for women and families in need if they're trying to avoid intimate partner violence, things of this nature. Every year I've done this. Last year I was the #1 fundraiser.
Yes.
And that's because Crime Writers On listeners came from everywhere and they donated $5, $10. I even got this. I've already got a $100 donation from a listener. And so everybody who's been giving, thank you so much. There's links at crimewriterson.com, or you can find one of the posts in our Facebook group.
In the show notes? That's the best. But people listening right now, put it right in the show notes, Kevin.
I'm making a note.
The phone is in their hand. They can just open the show notes and go click. Wouldn't that be good?
I'm writing show notes.
Look at your
You
show
can listen
notes,
to
everyone.
podcasts on your phone?
Oh, shut up. Shut up, Toby
Says
Ball.
the guy who's literally never heard this podcast before.
What's that music? It's called the theme music, Toby.
Kevin, how much did you raise last year?
I can't remember the amount.
It was more than $5,000.
It was something like that.
It was a lot.
I set my goal at $2,000 this year, and I think that was ambitious. But you guys always come through, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Toby, how much are you going to donate? See, this is the strong arm shit. Watch this. Toby, have you donated yet to my walk?
I'm donating $82.50.
$82.50?
Yep.
That's it. That's a very peculiar number. Why is it $82.50?
I just that's what rolled off my tongue.
Oh, excellent. All right. Laura Bricker, I know you the money that you were going to spend on new shoes, are you going to support me?
$82.51.
82. Oh my God, it's like Price is Right.
I always donate behind your back.
Yeah, okay.
I do. And you know how I always donate behind your back, and you're always like, why did you do that? I'm actually doing it and raising the money. I'm like, because you're also supposed to donate.
You're supposed to donate.
These things.
I donate when I make a separate donation when I register.
Yes, and then I also donate.
That's fantastic. It's all a good cause, everybody.
Yes.
And so I don't want to take up too much more time because we'll be talking about this in the next couple episodes. The walk is October 4th. It's in downtown Concord, New Hampshire. I will be streaming it on the Facebook group, and that way, you can watch as I tumble and fall and break something, but it's all for a good cause.
Yes. And what's the name of your team?
It is called Stilettos on the Side of Love. It's a team with some of our friends. They've organized it. They are, I want to say volunteer. They're
benefactors of this charity in a big way.
Yeah, they are. They give a lot of money, and so this is a little something we can do to kind of
it's all we
help
can
them out
afford
and
to
help the
do.
community. It's all we can afford to do.
Yeah.
Is have you guys throw money at us.
Yeah,
so anyway, it's always fun. Always thanking everybody, and I always say, look, if you can't support this event for me this year, that's fine. Try to do something closer to your home, and that makes sense for you. It's we're just always paying it forward.
People always say whenever I do a panel at any kind of thing about injustice, they always ask one panelist always, whether it's about wrongful conviction or some sort of injustice, intimate partner violence or anything. They always say, what can I do to help?
Right. Yeah, I've heard that. Yep.
And very often it's something like this is donating a little bit of money. It's showing up to volunteer for an event. It's just speaking out like you're doing right now using your platform. Like if you have a little bit of a platform, sharing it in this way, that is what you can do to help. Sometimes just showing up.
Yeah.
Showing up for, women and families in crisis, show up.
Yeah. And the idea when they say walk a mile in their shoes, it's more than just actually the walk in the high heels. It is about meditating. It's about thinking about the places that those people have been in and what you can do to help. So anyway, walk a mile in their shoes. Thank you so much.
All right. Is that all we have to talk about before we talk about what we're talking about?
Well, I mean, we got so much to talk about, so why don't we talk about that thing we're going to talk about?
Let's talk about the thing we're going to talk about. Laura and Toby, you ready to talk about the thing we're going to talk about?
I suppose.
Yeah, sure.
Toby's like, yeah, it's optional. Sure, why not? Why don't you talk about your fundraiser for another hour, Kevin?
End of show. Goodbye, everyone. Okay, let's do it. Let's go ahead and drop that first clip right now. Leading off.
We had people falling out of the boats just because they'd hit a stump and you didn't know it was there.
And that gave Scott a hunch about what had happened to his friend Mike.
I said, okay, if he's gone out and he fell overboard, the water's super cold now, the weather's cold.
It didn't look good.
In December of 2000, Florida's Mike Williams disappeared in alligator-infested waters while duck hunting. His loss seemed to crush his wife Denise and his best friend Brian Winchester. While authorities ruled his presumed death an accident, his mother Cheryl believed it was foul play.
As we went to leave, Miss Cheryl said, I just don't believe he's in the lake.
For years, Cheryl begged police and reporters to look into Denise's involvement. It wasn't until years later, when Denise got an insurance payout and married Brian, did investigators reopen Mike's case.
You say I was out duck hunting here at this time, but when you're coming back and you're trying to recreate a narrative with your ex-wife on where you were during that time so that you can cover, there must be something in there that's scaring him.
From Wondery comes Over My Dead Body, Gone Hunting, Season 4 of the True Crime podcast series. Host Jennifer Portman recounts the 2 decades-long investigation and her own reporting on whether Mike's wife and best friend were involved in his disappearance. Spoiler alert, we are going to be talking about significant plot points from Over My Dead Body, Gone Hunting. So if you want to remain spoiler-free, go to the estimated time code in our show notes to hear our thumbs up or thumbs down reviews. Now, Laura, this is not a revelatory podcast about a larger social issue, right?
Right. Yeah. So this is not one of those podcasts where there's some big injustice or something that needs to be righted. This to me was like more in the line of listening to a Dateline episode, like being retold. That said, I found it very engaging, but you've got this sort of traditional, what I think of when I think of turning on Dateline, a husband and wife. One of them goes missing, might be dead. Then there's maybe some infidelity. And then everybody talks about them. And it's that very sort of straightforward true crime type of story that, back in the heyday of the true crime books, these were the type of cases that everybody was selling books about.
Yeah. So what do you think, Toby? Because I think we found ourselves asking the same question when we were listening to this podcast.
I feel like that's why I didn't read a whole lot of true crime books back in the heyday of true crime books, according to Laura
Thanks,
Bricker.
Toby. Thank you.
No, I just, I don't know. I mean, I when it was over, I was trying to figure out like why they made a podcast about this particular case. When it was over, I was like, yeah, it's put together pretty well, but I don't know why I listened to it.
Yeah, I think if there's any like larger issue that they try to point to, it's near the end, right, Kevin, where it's like, did Denise get railroaded comparison to
the last episode? And I don't know if you want to jump all the way there or come back to it. But
yeah, I mean, but that's if there's a larger issue, is this sexist?
Yeah, I don't.
and I find myself thinking many times, but is this podcast sexist?
Sure. Well, I think that's an important question, but I don't think it's a legal point. I think it's more of a thinking point. Like, did Denise get railroaded because she's, they said, blame it on Eve or whatever.
That's literally what someone says in the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I think isn't that the title of the last episode? I don't know, like, how the prosecution could live with this idea that they're going to cut a deal with the killer, the guy who says he pulled the trigger after luring his best friend to what he thought was going to be his drowning death, and basically give him immunity for that, and then testify, make him the star witness against the wife, who may have been an accomplice, but certainly didn't take the same steps that he took, right? And like, well, my gut tells me that she was involved. The evidence at trial is like super weak on that point. Brian's testimony like really never incriminated her as much as it just sort of illustrated his own cold-bloodedness. So I was thinking, like, if I were on the jury, I would probably vote to acquit Denise, just based on that amount of information. Anyway.
There's no evidence. I'm sorry. Okay, I know we're jumping ahead here.
Yeah.
They tried on multiple occasions to entrap her by getting her on taped phone calls. She did not say anything incriminating in any of those phone calls. Nothing. The only evidence against her at that trial was the testimony of a guy who definitely murdered his friend and buried his body in a swamp. That's the only evidence against her. And it's like, there is this idea, and it's baked into this podcast from the beginning. So now I am going to go back to the beginning. And this is where it gets kind of Dateline-y for me. Old school Dateline. I think, and I'm just going to be clear, I actually think Dateline has gotten a lot better in the last few years around these kinds of issues. And Toby, I know you don't watch it, but it has improved around these kinds of issues, I think. And I actually kind of think things like shows like Date with Dateline, and they're more aware of how they're being received, I think, than they used to be. But old school Dateline, their whole deal was, aha, the little woman in the background pulling the strings. And they always implied, even if at the end, like the woman ended up having nothing to do with it, that like, is she a temptress? And that is threading through this whole damn thing, right? Like it's through this whole, and that's very distasteful to me.
Yeah. 2 quick points from me. One, I think there was one of the charges that she was convicted of was sort of like something along the lines of accessory after the fact. They probably had a good case about that. You know, the fact that she never came forward and, you know, I mean, she certainly could have offered some information into that investigation if she wanted to. But secondly, I feel like if that's the big twist at the end is that they're going after her, I think like maybe they tipped that way too much in the first 2 or 3 episodes, that she wasn't sad enough or she's funny. You know, it doesn't come off at all like a surprise to us in the podcast that, you know, this wasn't him working on his own. It was a plan together that they tried to do it. And the twist part wasn't there to pay off.
Yeah. Listen, I'm just going to be clear. I think there should be evidence to convict somebody. I don't know whether she's forgetting it or not, but I do think there should be evidence.
Evidence? What?
But in Brian's head, she was right behind him the whole time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He literally said that.
When you shot Mike Williams at Lake Seminole with 12-gauge shotgun, was Denise Williams standing there with you?
No, she wasn't. She was in my head behind me.
She was in your head.
Ethan let the moment sink in for the jury. Brian was saying Denise's role in the actual commission of the murder was that Denise was, quote, in my head behind me.
He literally said that on the stand. Was she? And that was what her defense attorney asking him on the stand, right? Was she even there? And he was like, in my head, she was.
Yeah, she was right behind me in my head.
In my head movie.
Laura, Jennifer Portman, the reporter here, local reporter on the story. What do you think about her as a host?
I think obviously she's the right person to tell this story. She has obviously a bigger job now, but when she was first introduced to this story, she's, you know, a new beat reporter. And she's one of those reporters that you can admire because she's, you know, that shoe leather reporter who's out looking for stories and is curious about what's happening. And she sees this ad in the newspaper that's been placed by Mike Williams' mother, Cheryl, asking for help and information about her missing son. And, you know, that kind of raises her curiosity. And she becomes involved in this case and starts doing all sorts of research, getting all the documentation, right down to like investigating what's the story with the alligators in this lake where he went missing. So I liked that we had consistency from somebody who obviously knows this case, but knows the family members in this case that were affected. And, you know, so many times we hear podcasts where we have the person say like, well, I was just reading this in the newspaper and then I just couldn't stop thinking about it. So I thought I'd make a podcast. Well, here's somebody who actually did all of the reporting and actually did have a vested interest and a legitimate interest in this case.
One day in May 2006, I made that right turn and followed the path surrounded by towering trees, wondering whether I had come to the right place. I was a reporter at the local newspaper, the Tallahassee Democrat, and I was new in the area, following my spidey sense for news.
I do wonder, like, why we're telling the story now, but it's an interesting case. I mean, it was interesting to listen to, but Jennifer was definitely the person to tell this story.
I actually think it was very thin, though. I mean, Toby, there felt like moments where there was more there that we didn't get. She's like, I did lots of stories on the insurance fraud. And I'm like, what insurance fraud? All we heard was that she got the death certificate and they made the claim. And then there was an investigation of insurance fraud. We didn't really hear a resolution to that. And then we get all these clues about domestic violence, like what happens with her new boyfriend at that hotel. But there's not a lot of digging into that. Didn't you feel like the reporting in this podcast, I mean, I felt like it was a rock skimming along the surface of the pond just to sort of like move the murder story along. That was sort of my impression.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like newspaper reports on it rather than going too far in depth. I guess you mentioned a couple of things that you could have followed up on, but I was trying to figure out, what's interesting about this case that you can kind of dig into. And I kind of feel like she would have done well to either center herself a little bit more in the case and have it follow her as she goes about the business of reporting on it, or center Cheryl, the mother, in the case. Like, I feel like either one of those would have given like at least some kind of arc, at least following somebody as they go along in trying to either report on the case or try and draw eyes to the case. But sort of absent that, again, like you said, it's sort of like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. They tried to do this, and that didn't work, and they found out he was lying about this. And it's just, in the end, it's like, it's kind of like, just to what end? Like, not to discount the effect it has on the people who are actually involved, but it doesn't really come off as being super unusual or like giving you some kind of idea about anything. It's just some stuff that happened.
Yeah, I was also wondering that too, Toby, as if Jennifer could have put herself a little more into this. I mean, she did recount her involvement in the places in the story where she was, but those are all kind of in the later half of the series. And, I think it might have been a way there, to insert herself more throughout that would have sort of elevated this podcast instead of like this, colored by numbers rehash of what it was essentially an older case, a way like someone who like really puts themselves in the story, someone like Laura Bricker, when she is investigating this pooping dog throughout Exeter in the latest episode of Leave It to Bricker.
Oh, wait, are we in the business section?
This is the business section already.
Okay, we're in the business section.
And for folks that are patrons at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media, they were treated to something. Now, the last episode, Laura, we were teasing about how the next episode of Leave It to Bricker was going to be about goats and poison ivy, which already sounds like
insane.
Peak Laura Bricker, right?
Yeah. Right.
Like you had me at goats. But then it was an emergency part one of what it promised to be a two-parter.
Yeah.
About a dog.
Breaking news.
Someone's dog has been shitting all over quaint AF Exeter.
I legit think you should pitch this story to NHPR. That's how good of a story I think it is.
Oh my God, did you listen? It's hysterical. Is all anyone is talking, and I shouldn't say hysterical, but it is all people are talking about.
No, it's hysterical. I saw the pictures. The poop is the biggest poop I've ever seen.
You've got to listen to the latest Leave It to Bricker.
Yeah.
Because people have theories. Is it a right-handed or a left-handed dog walker?
Yeah.
Is it this person? We have people that apparently there is a company for $40 to $60. You can do your own DNA test on dog poop to find the perpetrator.
Do it, man.
Yeah, fuck those people who spend that money.
It is the biggest. I mean, there are like giant dogs in my neighborhood. There's a dog named Dandy who belongs to my coworker Josh Rogers, who's like one of the biggest dogs I've ever seen. That dog's poop is like half the size of the pictures that you sent.
Well,
I've never seen anything like this. It's like bigger than Great Dane, bigger than Mastiff.
Yeah.
It looks like a lion is pooping in your town.
Maybe Carol Baskin could come up and help identify. She's getting out of big cats. Maybe she should get into some big dogs.
Someone's bulking up on Metamucil with it.
Wow. Yeah.
It's serious. Yeah.
Anyway, in order to hear that, you got to support us at the Bricker scale level. That's how you get Leave It to Bricker. You also get other great things. You can get all the episodes of Crime Writers On early and ad-free. You also can listen to the Crime Writers On after show. This week, we're going to be talking about Adnan Syed's impromptu press conference. He held the press conference for 2 hours on the 1-year anniversary of his exoneration, and so much has happened since then.
You're going to fill us in on that, right?
I'm going to read you in, as they say, on what's happening. We're going to talk about our thoughts. Also want to let people know we got a big event coming up. It's going to be on the evening of October 3rd. That also happens to be the season finale for Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. So we're going to have a live show that night on Crowdcast for our patrons. We're going to run through our episode, giving our reviews of season 3. And then it'll be out in the podcast. The audio version will be out in the feeds in an expedited fashion.
Wow.
Also, I want to let you know there is Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club. The next book club podcast episode is going to be about Gilbert King's Beneath a Ruthless Sun.
Did you see who signed up to show up for that Patreon?
I saw someone named Gilbert signed up, and I'm assuming.
He did.
Yeah. So if you haven't gotten an angry email yet, then apparently it went well. Can you just tease it? Did everybody like the book?
Oh yeah, it's a really good book. It's it's super interesting. I had Elon Green and Anita Cranford, and if you like Bone Valley, like this isn't sort of in the same time period or whatever. It's mostly late 50s, but he paints such a compelling picture of Lake County, Florida, and how this one racist sheriff kind of ran roughshod over the people there. So it's really good. Highly recommended. We had a really good conversation. Hopefully Gilbert King enjoys it.
Or enjoyed it.
Enjoyed it. I don't think he was watching us.
Oh.
I don't think he was watching us record.
Okay.
Oh no, I think he might have gone back and watched the video.
Yeah, I think he may have.
Oh really? Oh okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so we won't be able to take out those racist things that you say that I'm always editing out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, damn it, Toby. Really? Thought you were woke.
Right on the verge of getting canceled all the time.
All the time. Always say that. Anyway, those are all great things. Those are all great things you can get by supporting us. More than 400 exclusive podcasts there at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media.
So, Kevin, does that end the business section?
Yeah, that ends the business section.
I'm going to go ahead and fade that music out right now.
How does BP start refining lower carbon fuel? By investing to make today's refineries capable of doing more, like Cherry Point in Washington State, where $1.5 billion in capital improvements expanded BP's capacity for renewable diesel production, among other achievements. See how else BP is investing in America at bp.com/investing in America. That's bp.com/investing in America.
Huge RV hogging the right lane. Oh, here comes the new Toyota Grand Highlander.
That's the Cooper family. Look at them go, Jim.
The Coopers are in the clear.
With available 362 horsepower hybrid max powertrain, life's grander in the first ever Grand Highlander. Toyota, let's go places.
When you're ready to pop the question, the last thing you want to do is second-guess the ring. At BlueNile.com, you can design a one-of-a-kind ring with the ease and convenience of shopping online. Choose your diamond and setting. When you find the one, you'll get it delivered right to your door. Go to BlueNile.com and use promo code WELCOME to get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's code WELCOME at BlueNile.com for $50 off your purchase. BlueNile.com, code WELCOME.
So, Toby, you have a note that I want to ask you about.
Sure.
Why do you think that Brian and Denise don't understand how God works?
It is a strange thing to me because maybe they understand it better than me, but this whole idea that, you're going to commit a murder, but you're going to leave a slight chance on the off chance that God doesn't want him to die, where he can kind of get out of it and then everything will be fine. And then they just have to confess to God and everything's cool. It's strange. It's a strange little, I don't know what church they go to that preaches that kind of stuff. This is another reason why I think Denise probably has nothing to do with this.
Keep going, please, because all of your theories are true. Go ahead.
Okay, it's that Brian, while he's on the stand, is kind of asked, I think, is this right? He's asked about, why didn't you guys, why didn't you just get divorced and you guys get married? He's like, oh, Denise, I don't know if it's religion or family or pride, but, divorce wasn't really going to happen. And I was like, so you're going to murder him?
Yeah, murder's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's cool. That's better for her pride if you actually murder the guy.
So I loaded my gun and I made one or two circles around and I ended up circling closer towards him and he was in the water. And as I passed by, I shot him.
So, that just seems so kind of ridiculous that, again, if I was on the jury, it feels like he's not just like making this up, but he's making it up right on the spot. Like he hasn't put any thought into this at all. He's just sort of speaking off the cuff. And then the final thing is that Brian like tries to pay somebody to set her up from jail for the crime or to be complicit. If she's already complicit, why don't you just go with that? Why do you pay to double the complicity?
I loved that guy though, because he's like, well, I just took the money and I was like young, so I like bought some shit.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I was like,
that always happens. When has that plan ever worked out? Hey, you're a convict and you're leaving prison, but I'm stuck behind. Take my money and go do something with it.
Yeah.
That's what happened in the Seth Mazzelia case. That was a book, Toby, a true crime book that you obviously didn't read.
Which one was that?
That was Dark Heart.
Yeah.
The book that we wrote. Okay. Yeah, it's like he like gives money to somebody who's leaving prison. This guy's like, thanks for the money. Yeah, I'm going to tell you that I tried doing that thing and it didn't work.
But my other question was, there was a second guy outside
That's
prison
a great question.
who gave him the money. Why did you have to have that guy do it?
Who was that guy? How come he isn't getting arrested?
Yeah, why not just have that guy do the thing that his friend in prison? None of this.
Yeah.
And
That was
that's
an
why I
interesting
say the
question.
reporting was thin, because there were so many details. I was also like, what did Mike do for work that he was traveling all the time? And I know that those things seem small, but they're actually not small. They actually kind of fit into
Oh, no, they said that.
What did he do for work?
I don't know. I forget.
No,
I don't know.
you know why? Because they
Why?
didn't tell you. His boss was his good friend that he traveled with all the time, that he talked to. They never tell you what his job actually was. We only know what Brian's job was because Brian sold him the insurance policy.
Yeah.
I'll just add, though, if they did say it, I forgot about it.
That's what I just said. Yeah.
All right, so Laura, we have to talk about Cheryl for a second.
Right.
Standing with like signs outside a church in this community seems to have really pissed some people off. I'm not sure why that was a particular move that pissed people off, but it really did.
She was supposed to go to church.
I mean, it worked, right?
Yeah, she for a long time was the one that was really keeping this case alive before Mike's body was found. And it's just really sad when you think about this mother out there hoping for some sort of closure and hoping to be taken seriously. And instead people are just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like with your son, like people are mad at her for doing this. So that's why I'm glad that Jennifer Portman followed up with her, because I felt like finally somebody was listening to this woman. I like to always look at the pictures of the people that are involved in cases. And she got like wheeled into like in her little wheelchair, the most recent hearings in this case. So this is a woman who is aging as this case is going on. Her health is maybe declining, and yet she's continuing to sort of persevere to find some closure for what happened to her son. And yeah, if you look also, you can see the pictures of her holding up her little signs, and they're just very homemade too. So maybe that's why she was getting a lot of shit for her signs. But, I'm glad that she was there to see this case through when it finally got to that point.
So, Kevin, the original theory is that he got eaten by alligators after getting pulled down while wearing his waders.
Yeah.
There's another thing that
That alligator had a TikTok clock inside it who kept chasing him.
Yeah, I know. But he didn't get eaten by alligators, listeners. So Kevin's joke, by the way, it's gruesome, but like it actually didn't get eaten.
It didn't happen.
But there is an opening scene in the podcast where they sort of fly over, and then it's like all the alligators are on the boat, and then she says something like, "But there was something else there lurking that was much more dangerous." And after listening to the podcast, I'm like, actually, no, there wasn't, because his body wasn't actually even there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But there is this thing that never gets followed up on, where months after he's missing, they pull out his waders and jacket and all of his paperwork and stuff. Mm-hmm. His hunting license is intact and his waders don't have any slime on them or anything.
Yeah.
Aren't you curious, like, what the fuck?
So, but if this testimony that Brian gave is that he thought the water would fill up the waders and bring him straight down and drown him, Mike was able to get out of the waders and was able to get out of the surface of the water. That's why he had to shoot him, right? So I'm like, did he drag the body and then pull in the waders as well?
Right.
And like this filled with water.
Those, yeah.
Water weighs 8 pounds a gallon, right? So that's like a whole other,
he did
pull that. He did.
He had to have, because he was covering up the murder. He had to have pulled the waders out of the water. He had to have, right?
He couldn't leave them.
But later he did, right? Later, apparently we believe it was planted months later not at the time because there was no slime
Do you know
on
how
it.
we know it was planted months later? Because the jacket was also there.
Yeah. I mean, I thought if it was going to be like, oh, he's beaten by alligators.
Look at me.
Leave him for the alligators.
Nancy Drew. Case closed. I solved the case. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So the whole idea that this is his plan and then it's foiled because he takes off his waders seems like, damn it. That was the one loophole. He could just take them off and then he won't sink to the bottom. The whole thing is just ridiculous.
It wasn't like wearing, it was an astronaut suit and 5 people had to help him in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, he obviously like unclipped them and they're heavy and they sank, I mean, they probably just slipped right off.
Or they floated because they had like air in them or whatever.
Either way. I mean, it's not like if they're heavy, they'll sink. And if they're not heavy, they weren't going to pull them down anyway.
And
so
how deep was this water? Because it was deep.
Well,
okay.
it wasn't that deep because he was able to, there was rocks that he was able to like swim
the stumps.
Yeah.
They were stumps.
Stumps. Well,
yeah. So there were trees. So they couldn't have been that deep, right?
I kind of feel like Brian never thought out any of this stuff very carefully.
Yeah. Like his wife being asleep when she wasn't. I mean, he tried to kidnap Denise. He was going to murder her.
Yeah.
Why was he trying to murder her if she was complicit in the murder? Right? This is another like big question. He was going to murder her, right?
Only if he thought that she was going to give him up, right? But there was also like this great undercover audio with Kathy. We didn't even talk about this. I thought this was one of the better parts of the podcast. They had this super great undercover audio.
With Kathy?
If I thought it had been important or if I thought I should have known, I guess I would have written it all down. But no, I didn't. I didn't think, oh, you know what? I'm going to find out later today that Mike has disappeared, and in 5 years, the cops are going to think I did it. I better write down everything I did today.
If you don't remember, then that's your problem. I know what I remember, and I don't like that.
Cool as a cucumber.
She keeps her composure.
My favorite thing about Kathy is she's like, he's watching me now to see if my lips move. I'm like, are you talking with your lips not moving? What are you doing, Kathy?
I'm really good.
Kathy's turning her head, just like pretend to fix her hair.
Drink a glass of water.
What generates clean power and a powerful economic boost? BP's offshore wind strategic partnership with Equinor could add up to 4.4 gigawatts of power on the East Coast and revitalize the Port of Albany. These projects are expected to add $1 billion to New York's economy. See how else BP is investing in America at bp.com/investing in America. That's bp.com/investing in America.
Huge RV hugging the right lane. Oh, here comes the new Toyota Grand Highlander.
That's the Cooper family. Look at them go, Jim.
The Coopers are in the clear.
With available 362 horsepower hybrid max powertrain, life's grander in the first ever Grand Highlander. Toyota, let's go places.
Ready to pop the question? The jewelers at BlueNile.com have got sparkle down to a science with beautiful lab-grown diamonds worthy of your most brilliant moments. Their lab-grown diamonds are independently graded and guaranteed identical to natural diamonds, and they're ready to ship to your door. Go to BlueNile.com and use promo code WELCOME to get $50 off your purchase of $500 or more. That's code WELCOME at BlueNile.com for $50 off. BlueNile.com.
All right, let's do what we do. Let's let our listeners know, should they check out Over My Dead Body, Gone Hunting? It is a very Wondery podcast from Wondery. Laura Bricker, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Over My Dead Body, Gone Hunting?
I think I'm going to be in the minority here. So I'm going to go mild thumbs up on this. This isn't a podcast where I feel like there's any big revelation that I couldn't find just going and looking up articles about this case. But in terms of the production of it and the writing for me, it was very easy to follow. It was told in a way that was like reminiscent of watching Dateline, but listening to it. And I was engaged listening to this story the whole time that I was listening. And yeah, there was issues with it. I feel like that sort of defense advocate side of my persona was fired up at the way that Denise was portrayed in this. But otherwise, the reason I'm not going full thumbs up is I do think, they could have gone deeper on some of the issues. But overall, it was a very superficial in the way that it was told. Look at this case, but they had audio of all these people that were involved. They had some really interesting audio clips from people that knew them. And I mean, who and this is just a teaser and a bit of a spoiler, who doesn't want $3,000 worth of pot brownies?
Well, yeah.
I mean, that was one of my favorite parts of this podcast. So mild thumbs up for me.
Toby Ball, what do you think? Thumbs up or thumbs down for Over My Dead Body, Gone Hunting?
I guess I'm a thumbs sideways. I think the positives are a lot of what Laura said. It's easy to follow. There's some good audio. You know, the writing's fine, all that kind of stuff. The story, there's not a ton to it. And then, as Laura also said, you know, the sort of reporting of the information you get is sort of only so deep. But at the same time, I don't know if this case really needs like a huge forensic examination or whatever, just because it doesn't seem so vital or interesting to me. So anyway, I mean, I think it's fine. Like we've certainly listened to a lot worse, and I think it's put together fine. So the thumb sideways. I don't want to give it a thumbs down because it's not that bad.
Kevin Flynn.
Yeah, I'm a slight thumbs up on this. It's fine. It's a fine true. It's perfectly fine.
This is like the celery of true crime podcast.
It's serviceable. And if they want to put that up like in a big ad in Variety, like what's serviceable Crime Writers On, you know, it works like that.
It's store brand orange juice. It's fine.
It's fine. Look, I mean,
it ain't Tropicana, folks. It's fine.
It's certainly something Dateline should be covering, and I believe they did cover it. It kind of has those kind of beats to it. It's put together very competently. Jennifer is great in this because this is the story of her career, right? And so I can tell that she's enthusiastic about it. Put together well. Just said that it doesn't there's really nothing about it that sort of sings. There's some really good twists and turns. I mean, great twists and turns. But without spoiling, I think that they tipped their hand a little bit in the beginning on something that they were hoping was going to be a big surprising twist at the end, and it just wasn't. If I had been made to feel like there was a big twist at the end, maybe I would be like, oh, wow, enthusiastic thumbs up. But it's okay. Listen to it. It's certainly a lot better than the stuff that we've gotten from Wondery in the past.
Okay, I'm giving it a thumb sideways only because I think people who like this kind of true crime podcast will like it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't give it a thumbs down because for what it is, it was well done. Okay. But I've got a big complaint about this podcast that I need to share. Personally, I don't like it, but I can't say that it's bad. So I'm giving it a thumb sideways. Over My Dead Body season 1 sort of did the Carol Baskin story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's an interesting story here that if it's not true that the woman involved isn't positioned the way that she might be on its surface, they did a terrible job exploring it. And it could have been framed completely differently. And if it is true, they also did a terrible job with that. So I just think the whole thing should have been flipped and done from that perspective. Because if that is really what's going on here, like that the result is or isn't right, that's the story.
Mm-hmm.
The story isn't this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. The story is like, here's the deal, guys. Now let's go back and tell you how we got here. And that is the story. It actually does speak to larger issues. And that's just not addressed at all. And I just think that's a missed ball in this whole thing. And it bothers me. It really bothers me because it was just a missed opportunity to do something more interesting with this interesting genre of stuff of people looked at for things that we might find unlikable kind of stuff. And this is a great example of that. And I really think that this could have been one of those things. So I'm just going to leave it there. Thumb sideways for me. People will like it. I didn't hate listening to it, so I can't give it a thumbs down, if that makes sense. That makes sense?
Yeah, it's serviceable.
It's serviceable. All right, now it's time for my favorite part of the podcast, a little something I like to call the Crime of the Week. Scientists from around the world were recognized this month for their research, but not in a good way. The annual Ig Nobel Prizes were awarded for humorous scientific feats. A Polish paleontologist was awarded for his white paper on why scientists like to lick rocks. He says the wet surface makes the fossil and mineral textures stand out. They also taste like a rock. An award went to scientists in 4 countries who experimented with reanimating dead spiders to make grippers for robots. Other studies included whether electrified chopsticks change how food tastes, an anal print sensor, whether or not teacher boredom affects student boredom, how many pedestrians will look up at the sky if they see another person looking up at the sky.
I would do that, yeah.
Everyone would. And whether the motion in the ocean is caused by anchovy sex.
Salty, right?
This is the 33rd first annual Ig Nobel Prizes. That's right, the 33rd first annual. Before the ceremony went virtual during the pandemic, honorees received their prizes from actual Nobel laureates at Harvard. We're not 100% clear on whether these experiments were supposed to be serious or whether they were a joke from the beginning. We just wish we were in the room for the pitch meeting to get their funding. So panel, the 34th first annual Ig Nobel Prizes are around the corner. What is the next oddball experiment to be honored? What do you think, Laura Bricker?
Turning all the dog poop in Exeter into cotton candy.
What do you think, Toby? What is the next oddball experiment to be honored at the Ig Nobel Prizes?
Why aren't women thinking about the Roman Empire?
What do you think, Kevin?
Beans, are they the magical fruit?
Oh, yeah. No. All right, Laura Bricker, if folks want to reach out to you to find out the answer to those conundrums in Exeter, how can they find you on social media?
They can find me at Laura Bricker.
What about you, Toby? How can you be found online?
At TobyBall NH.
Kevin Flynn?
Yeah, Toby, what do you think the people in the Roman Empire thought about?
Us, probably Twitter.
Succession.
Twitter at Kevin P. Flynn.
If you want to follow me on Twitter or Instagram, you can find me at Reb Lavoie. Follow the show everywhere at Crime Writers On, and I encourage you to join our official Crime Writers On Facebook discussion group. All you got to do is go to Facebook, look for us, hit join the group. If you can name one of us, say which one is your favorite crime writer, and literally name one of us. There were 2 Laura Brickers today, by the way. We will let you in. We also have a regular Facebook page, just to go there for content, but join the group. I promise it's awesome. Get episodes early and ad-free at patreon.com/Partners in Crime Media. You'll also get the Crime Writers On After Show, Married with Podcast, Laura Bricker's Leave It to Bricker podcast, and Toby Ball's Deep Dive Book Club podcasts. Our theme song was composed and performed by Ty Gibbons. Our line editor is the wonderful Livy Burdett, who is moving, by the way, Kevin, to Spain.
To Spain.
The executive producer of this program is Kevin Flynn. This show was recorded in the Treehouse Yoga Studio above the Mockingbird Cafe in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio, otherwise known as Studio C, the closet in our New Hampshire basement, where I also continue to pay the premiums on Kevin's life insurance, even though he thought he let it lapse. That's actually kind of true. On behalf of all the crime writers, thank you so much for listening. We will catch you later. His mother, Cheryl, believed it was foul play. Foul play. I see what you did there.
I didn't even realize that. We always say foul play.
I know.
All right. There you go, Livy. There's your outtake. Fuck.
Partners in Crime Media. What does customer convenience have to do with the energy transition? BP recently purchased Travel Centers of America, adding more than 280 locations to our U.S. retail network, including many that could become EV charging locations. See how else BP is investing in America at bp.com/investing in America. That's bp.com/investing in America.